Sharkie Gamer here. So today we're taking a look at an awesome controller for the Nintendo Wii. Now when I say controller, I really mean an actual controller. This is not a plastic Wii shell that you have to install your Wiimote Nunchuck into. This is an actual machine gun controller that has the Wiimote Nunchuck built into it. So you don't need to use your existing Wiimote Nunchuck or anything, you just pick this up and use this on its own. So it's an actual controller. Now if you're looking at this and thinking, okay, why does it look so familiar? It may look familiar because quite some time back on sort of all the gaming and hardware news websites, there was an article that was advertising the MP5 Rapid Shot machine gun for Wii. And that gun looked absolutely identical to this, except that gun had like an orange tip on the end of the gun. And it was the exact same kind of advertisement, the Wiimote Nunchuck integrated into the gun. And everyone was quite excited for it because it was one of the first actual gun controllers the Wii was getting, not just a plastic shell. But then all of a sudden, it sort of disappeared. We never heard anything about it again. Most people thought it was actually cancelled. Maybe it was too realistic, or whatever the case may be. And everyone just thought it was cancelled. And I admit, I thought it was cancelled as well. I thought it would be a gun controller you'd never get your hands on. Until, of course, I found this gun. Now, this is actually a gun that was only released in Europe. I actually found it myself in Italy. So I actually bought this from Italy. And that's why there's all Italian on the box itself. I'm not sure if it got released anywhere else in the world, but it looks like it may be only a European exclusive. Why they only released in Europe, I'm not sure, but like I say, maybe in certain parts of the world it was actually banned because it was too realistic. It might be the case. But even though this does not say MP5 Rapid Shot, it is exactly the same gun. Like if you look at this picture of this one, and you look at pictures on the net of the actual MP5 Rapid Shot, it looks absolutely identical except for that orange tip on the end. So it's obviously the same gun, and they obviously just renamed it. Maybe a different company took it over, and they only released it in Europe. So that is the bit of the background of this gun. So now that you know that, let's take a look at the box and unbox it and get a closer look at the actual gun itself. So first, taking a look at the box here. You'll see the name at the top there is in Italian, and that actually just means machine gun. So basically, Machine Gun Wii, and it's made by that company, which I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce, but that's the company that make it. And of course, it shows you the Wiimote and Nunchuck integrated, shows you a picture of the gun, and of course has little things here in Italian. And of course, a little picture there, having a little X through the Wiimote and Nunchuck, saying you don't need one to use this controller, which is awesome. You do not see many Wii accessories at all that say that. And of course, that's a picture of the gun. And there is a little flap here if you open this up. It sort of shows a bit of a closer look at the actual gun itself, and sort of points out the features. Again, they're all in Italian, but it sort of points out the features of the gun. And of course, there's a nice window there that gives you a sneak peek at what the actual gun looks like. So it looks pretty awesome. Moving on to the back of the box. And as you can see here, it's actually got a whole lot of information in different languages. And this is why I say it's only released in Europe, because it's got all these kind of European type countries. So, I don't know if it was released anywhere else. Of course, there is an English little description, which I'll just read. It's only really short. Wii machine gun with integrated Wiimote and Nunchuck. The Wii machine gun has a realistic design that is modeled off the famous Heckler Koch MP5, the favorite weapon used by military and police force from all over the world, thanks to its precision and reliability. Wii Remote and Nunchuck are integrated into the machine gun, and all buttons are specifically positioned for an easy access. To supply power to the Wii, you need 2 AA batteries, nothing more. Nor Wiimote nor Nunchuck. Every wrist or arm movement is automatically produced in real time on the screen, guaranteeing a one-to-one response from the game for an even more incredible experience. So that's a little description there. It's pretty much the only thing on this entire box is actually in English. So, let's take a look at this actual controller. Okay, so this is it. This is the machine gun, the MP5 Rapid Shot if you would like to call it, or just the machine gun. It is pretty awesome. So as you can tell straight away, first impression is it's an incredibly realistic kind of gun. They have really modeled it sort of after the realistic weapon. So you can see why some countries may have banned this, because it does look incredibly realistic, especially since it's all in black, which I think it makes it look really cool. So first thing is a little bit of customization with this. This scope up here, you can actually look through it. If you can see there, it goes right through, and you can sort of see right through it. But if that gets in your way, you can remove it. You sort of just slide it forward like that, and it comes off, or you can put it back on by sliding it forward like that. So it is completely removable if you don't like it there. Say it's getting in your way, you can pull it off if you don't want it. Because you don't really use it, I mean, you really aim using the crosshair on the screen, so it's not really needed, so you can just remove it if you don't want it. Which is quite a cool little thing. Remove it if you don't need it, that way you can have it out of your way and it doesn't bug you. Now, the main controls, you have your trigger, of course, here. It's got a very nice response and click to it, and it feels like a proper gun trigger. Now this button, basically this trigger acts as your B button, and of course you use all your shooting. On the back of the gun here, you've actually got an analog stick, and of course you use this for your movement. Feels quite nice. It is a really tiny stick, as you can see there. They've made it kind of small, so it kind of fits there really nicely. But it is pretty small. It's still very responsive, really easy to move and get to as well. And below that, you've got two buttons. You've got the Z and the C buttons. And again, they press pretty easily. And if you want, you can use your analog stick and sort of use the end part of your thumb there to press the button below it without really worrying too much about you letting go of the stick. Of course, you can let go of the stick if you want to, but if you don't, you can sort of press it while you're using the stick as well. Now, moving to the front of the gun here, you've actually got a D-pad. It's a pretty basic D-pad, but it does the trick. It's pretty responsive, works pretty well. It is a kind of small D-pad, so the biggest thing I had with using it is every now and again I'll accidentally press it in a way, and I'll press it together, which means it'll trigger one or the other. That's just because it's such a small little D-pad, and the way you hold the gun, you tend to use your thumb with it, which is so much easier to actually accidentally press two directions and maybe get the wrong result that you want. But other than that, it's pretty responsive, it works pretty well, and once you get used to it, you can kind of adjust yourself. Below that, you've got the 1 and 2 buttons, and they press pretty well, really easy to get to. Again, you press them with your thumb. Moving over a little bit, you'll see the LED lights. They power up, of course, when you actually power this thing up. You've got a power button for the controller to turn it on and off, and that, of course, presses pretty solidly. You're not going to accidentally press that. It's quite a hard button, being just a power button. If we flip it over now, on the back of the other side, you've got the home button. I'll try to get this in focus. There we go. There's the home button, where you can go back to your actual Wii menu. Next to that, you've got the plus and minus buttons. They press quite easily. Next, you've got a sync button, so you can actually sync this to your Wii console. So that just works as your standard kind of sync button. You press it, you press the sync button on your Wii, and you can sync this up to your console. Now, further to the front of the gun, you've got an A button. And again, that's pretty responsive, and it's quite a nice size as well, so it's really easy to press. Now, to power this up, this takes two AA batteries. And how do you install the batteries? Because it doesn't look like any obvious spot. Well, it's actually in this magazine. There's a little clip down here. You press that clip, the magazine slides out, and you install your batteries in there. Install two AA batteries, and of course you clip that back into the spot, and then you can power this on, which is a pretty cool feature. I like that a lot. I think that's pretty cool. Keeps it out of the way, and it's pretty cool how it's just a removable magazine. so it looks like you're reloading it with batteries. So quite a cool little thing, and it works pretty well. So using this gun, well, you use it pretty much like a standard gun. There is a bit of a stock here, so you can actually put that into your shoulder and hold it something like this. And of course, your other hand goes on this grip here. You can reach the trigger with, of course, your normal trigger finger. Release your analog stick with the thumb, and of course you can hit those buttons as well, or hit them at the same time. Over the front here, when you're holding it like this, your thumb is reaching 1 and 2, and of course you're reaching your D-pad as well. So really easy to reach it with your thumb. Now if you just flip this over, on the other side that's where your A button is, so when you're holding it, these fingers will hit that A button. And this side, when you're holding the trigger, you can easily just put your fingers up here to hit those buttons if you need them. So they're right there by the trigger, easy to access. Now, this of course just works just like a Wiimote Nunchuck, so not only does it have all the buttons, but it also has your motion sensing features as well. So in the game, for instance, if the game is to say melee, so there's a melee thing, and originally it was to like move the Wiimote forward in a motion, you can do that with the gun as well and move it forward, and of course that'll trigger that motion. So it picks up that motion fine. Now to set it up, basically you just install the batteries, and I'll show you how to do that. So you pull that out, and of course it takes 2 AA batteries in it. Just grab these batteries here. They install like that into it, and then this of course just plugs back into it, and you can turn it on by just pressing this. It'll vibrate, and of course that on button will come on. It'll light up. So now that is on, and you can actually use it in the game. Of course, if you haven't used the gun before, you'd have to sync it up to the console first. But then, of course, you can start playing the game straight away, and start playing it and enjoying it, basically. Because this basically works as an actual controller. It's an actual controller. It's not a shell. How awesome is that? So to truly show this controller and how it works, I've actually filmed some gameplay. So now, before I get into my actual thoughts on what I think about this controller and how it works, let's go take a look at some short gameplay with the game The Conduit. So let's take a look at that.
I'm detecting repeated seismic readings in the area. Be careful. Use the ASE device to hack into the main computer. The ASE was designed as a universal cipher. Aim at the computer and charge the ASE device to hack their system. According to these files, Prometheus has developed some sort of neurotoxin. They're storing the active cultures in the second floor infirmary. You need to locate and destroy them.
Why does Hamas continually link Freemasonry to world domination? These are questions we must ask ourselves as free-thinking, intelligent. He's in here!
That must be the neurotoxin Prometheus created. That explains how he's able to turn our men into his puppets.
So that was some gameplay from the Conduit game. As you could see from that footage, this machine gun worked very well. When playing the game, aiming was really nice and easy. All you did was move the gun, and of course the crosshair on screen followed very smoothly and accurately, so no problems aiming. With the trigger as well as the buttons, all of them responded pretty much immediately, so I had no problems using any of the functions, walking, shooting, pressing anything else, so all of it worked very well. Now going into motion. Now with the Conduit game, we'll use that as an example, and if you had a traditional Wiimote and Nunchuck, when you're triggering the motion for melee command, you're actually moving the Wiimote forward, and it triggers that kind of melee command, so you can hit your enemies with your gun. Now, if you like flick your Nunchuck in like an arc kind of movement, it will actually throw a grenade. So those two motions I tried to replicate in this gun. So firstly, the melee is really easily. You kind of just push the gun forward a bit in a motion, and it triggers that melee really nice and easily, no problems whatsoever. But with the grenade, I was trying to figure out, when I first started playing this with the Conduit, how did he throw a grenade? And I eventually figured out that they had assigned the second motion that would normally be on the Nunchuck to the clicking down of the analog stick. So this analog stick actually clicks down, and whatever second motion would be normally assigned to that Nunchuck is actually assigned to the clicking down of the analog stick. And I think they did that so that there wasn't like two motion sensors in the gun that would conflict and maybe have issues. So instead of doing that, they decided, okay, we'll have one motion in the gun which you could use for your traditional Wiimote, and the second motion sensor would be then not motion, it would actually be assigned to a button which would be the analog click down button. So I think they just did that so it would work better and it would function a bit better and wouldn't have any conflicts. So overall though, that worked very well, and it's actually better to have grenades by clicking down the analog stick, because it's real easy, right there access. You don't have to, you know, start shaking in a weird angle or something like that to throw a grenade. So it's pretty cool. The only downside I can say about this controller, because this controller does work very well, the only downside is if you shake this too vigorously or move it too much in a downward angle, so just like downward, something like this, at it too harshly, then the controller would turn off for a couple of seconds, and I think that's because that downward kind of motion, if it's too harsh, it seems to disconnect the batteries for a little bit and then reconnect them. So it's almost like gravity kind of pulling the battery or magazine down slightly, which disconnects them. And of course if you click a button or anything, it turns the gun back on. But I didn't find that often, because once I had learnt that with the melee you don't have to move it much, you just have to move it forward a little bit, I didn't have that problem again. So really, it's only if you shake it too much downwards it'll do that. But if you don't do that, it's not going to have a problem. So that's really the only bad thing I can say about it that happened occasionally for me, but it didn't happen enough to be a major problem. So overall, this gun works very well with first-person shooter games. It's very high quality. You know, it's an awesome controller to have. I mean, it's got a Wiimote and Nunchuck built into it, and it's an actual machine gun controller. And I mean, there are very few actual Wii controllers. Most of them are just kind of cheap plastic shells. So to have an actual gun controller that is of this high quality, that works really well, and also looks pretty darn cool, is pretty awesome. The unfortunate thing, of course, is this thing is pretty rare. You don't see it very often, and like I said before, I've only ever seen it in Italy, and Italy's not only a hard place to buy stuff from, but of course you don't see things often in terms of controllers like this in Italy, you know, so it can be very hard to find. And I would say that considering how realistic this thing looks, in some countries this might even have been banned. That may be a very possibility of why it didn't get released worldwide, because I mean, it does look really realistic. You don't need to take this outside with you, and the police might think you're holding a real gun. So overall, this thing is a great controller. I am most definitely going to be using this with other first-person shooters I play on the Wii, because it just works so well, and it's so cool to actually play games with. So I'll give you another sort of closer look. It does definitely look very cool. So you guys, that was the MP5 Rapid Shot, or I guess you could just call it the machine gun for Wii. Pretty awesome controller, and very rare as well. Anyway guys, I am Sharkie Gamer. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll have heaps more gaming controller and accessory videos up very shortly. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below if you want to. If you like this video, hit that like button. It always helps out a lot, guys. And don't forget to share and favorite the video, as it helps get my video around. Anyway guys, thanks for watching.